Welcome back to Beyond Campus, a podcast that delves into various topics pertaining to Israel, Zionism, and building a positive connection to Israel on campus and beyond. I'm your host, Destiny Albritton, with the Israel on Campus Coalition. This episode's special guest is Hannah Garces, a good friend of mine and a strong advocate for Israel and the Jewish people. Hannah currently serves as an Advocacy Associate for the Philos Action League, an initiative of the Philos Project that aims to counter rising antisemitism in America and around the world. Welcome to the show, Hannah. Hannah, I am so glad you're joining us on the podcast today. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you so much for having me, Destiny.
I'm really excited about our conversation today. The Philos Project is such an important organization, and I know you personally do really important work there, and I'm really thrilled to share what you're doing with the Beyond Campus audience today. So just thanks again.
Of course.
So to get started, I would love to hear what first inspired you to connect to Israel in the first place. I know I had Darian from Passages on recently, and I told him that when I go to a meeting, ever since I first started working at ICC, when I start a meeting and they realize, like, oh, this is not who I was expecting. They want to know my whole life story before I even get down to business, and they want to know, like, what my connection to Israel is. Why am I doing this? Why do I work here? And so I'd just love to start with that question for you, Hannah. Why do you care about Israel?
Yeah, thanks, Destiny. Well, I have the same experience when I walk into a room, especially when, they're like, oh, wait, you're not Jewish, because my first name is Hannah. So it's very just like understandable that people get that mixed up. And then I'm like, oh, no, Garces. And then there's some eyebrow raises. So I get this question all the time. My connection to Israel actually started with my connection to the Jewish people. So when I was growing up, I became close friends with a few Jewish girls in my middle school. And it was really my first experience learning about the cultural and religious aspect of what it meant to be Jewish. I went to bat mitzvahs, and I was so interested in learning more. And while we were doing all of this, they were prepping for their bat mitzvahs, and I was going to the temple and like going to services with them. I was also learning about the Holocaust for the very first time, and it was like two worlds completely colliding, because I'm hearing about this history about something so horrible that happened to the Jewish people, and then meeting the Jewish people real time where I lived and seeing how vibrant and wonderful their community is and how rich their traditions and identity are. And I couldn't understand how those two things correlated, and how in the world we lived in that something so horrific could happen and people could be targeted because of their identity, their faith. So I wanted to explore all I could to figure out why that happened and how that could never happen again. So I made it my mission at the age of like 13, I believe. Yeah, 13, to go out and learn what I could. I dived deep into learning about their family histories. I just asked my friends all these questions. So my connection really started there. And I wanted to go to school for Holocaust and genocide education so that I could make sure that as a believer, I was someone who was teaching what had happened in order to ensure that didn't happen again. So when I got to college, I studied Jewish studies because there was no Holocaust and genocide program at Rutgers University. And of course, Jewish studies, a lot of my classmates were Jewish. So I had a whole new batch of Jewish friends, and they introduced me to Israel real time. Obviously, I grew up in a church that talked about Israel from the scriptures, and I knew it was important to bless Israel and to pray for Israel. And that was something that we did growing up. But real time Israel, what's happening on the ground, I got connected to in college. And so I wanted to find out how I could get there. So I went on my first trip in 2011, which feels like an ages ago. And it was a Christian trip called the Israel Experience. And I had a supernatural moment, and I just fell in love with the land, the people. I already had this strong connection with the Jewish people because of my friendships and relationships and my faith. And Israel kind of just solidified all that. And so as soon as I got on the plane home, I was asking how I could get back, as I'm sure a lot of the audience feels the same way. So that was my story, elevator pitch story. And then came home and started doing pro-Israel stuff at Rutgers University. I started the first Christian pro-Israel group on my campus, which was really hard. Rutgers, unfortunately, doesn't have the best track record with handling anti-Semitism and anti-Israel sentiment. So it was an uphill battle, but it really was so important. And I just knew that this was the mission that has been put on my life. And fast forward, went back to Israel for my master's, and now I work at the Philos Project.
Wow, what a story. Have you ever been to the Friends of Zion Museum in Jerusalem?
No, I haven't. I was just in Jerusalem recently. We walked past it, and when I was living there, it hadn't been built yet. So I haven't had the opportunity, but I need to go. It's on my list.
Hannah, okay, I don't want to spoil things for you, but I'm about to. No, well, I'll just say this. So there's this theme in the Friends of Zion Museum. I don't want to spoil it for everyone who's listening either, but the theme of, so it's about people who weren't Jewish, particularly Christians, who at some point in history contributed to helping the Jewish people or contributed to the establishment of the state of Israel. And the tagline essentially is there are certain moments where you answer a call, or it's just something stirs in your heart, and these people answered a call to help the Jewish people and answered a call to leave their mark on Israel's story. And it's really beautiful to hear how you answered that call and how you had that moment for yourself, where you were just could not believe what happened to the Jewish people during the Holocaust, and you couldn't believe the stories of your friends' families and what they had survived, and you just kept learning and kept growing, and here you are, you leave your mark on Israel's story, and you help the Jewish people professionally, and that's just so beautiful, Hannah.
Oh, thank you. I got goosebumps when you were saying that. And I mean, it's so nice to be in a company with someone else who had that call, because I know that that's something that's important to you as well. So I love that we can have these conversations and community. And I just appreciate all the people that have helped along the way. When I was in college, it was my Jewish friends that really rallied around me to help get this group on campus started. And then I was an Emerson Fellow in college as well. So I got training from Stand With Us to learn how to advocate better. And these opportunities are available to, Christian students who have the same feelings that you and I have had, Destiny. And I just have to thank all of those people along the way and the encouragement we get from our friends in the Jewish community, because they know it's challenging. We didn't grow up with this. This is something that got placed in our path, on our lives. And so I just wanted a moment to thank all of them. We work with great people, that.
Yeah. And it can be so hard starting a pro-Israel club, period. But starting a pro-Israel club for Christian students, I did that at a public university, also at the University of Missouri. We have really similar stories, Hannah, because I also went to Tel Aviv University for grad school. So
I was at the other one, Hebrew U. So we just opposite.
Totally. So we very much have been on similar paths. I would love to hear about what the Philos Project, because the Philos Project, and I know what you do there, is so important. So many people listening might not be as familiar with the Philos Project. Could you introduce your organization?
Yeah. So the Philos Project is a Christian nonprofit. We specifically work on creating positive Christian engagement in the Near East. And that all revolves around, kind of having a foundation on the Hebraic tradition, which is something that we share with the Jewish people. So at the root of what we do, Israel is at the center of it. So we believe that we can't have positive engagement with Christians in the Near East if we don't have it here as well. And so that's why the Philos Action League was started. So the Philos Action League is a community of Christians around the country. We also have some people abroad now, which is exciting. and they will show up in solidarity anywhere an anti-Semitic incident occurs, to stand in solidarity with their Jewish friends and neighbors. So it's so simple, but it's so important, because showing up, it just says a lot to a community that's being targeted. And I know that in the few times that I've personally gotten to deliver the flowers to a site that something has happened, or I've interacted with someone and spoken to them, they're so appreciative to know that there are friends out there who will do such a thing. And Philos means friend in Greek. So it goes right along with our mission. So we also work with the postgraduate students. So postgraduate students, young professionals, we have opportunities for them to learn more about the Hebraic roots of our faith, and also how we can be better friends to Israel and the Jewish people, and also just about indigenous Christian communities in the Near East who are, living under persecution like right now. So we empower young leaders to learn how to advocate and also just be friends to those communities. And that's what we do at the Philos Project.
Wow. It's such important work, and it can be so hard to stay connected after graduating college when you're, a pro-Israel activist, you're a Christian, and there isn't necessarily a pro-Israel community for you to plug into or just stay involved in after you graduate. And so I think this work that you guys are doing with the Philos Action League is incredibly important, but also just what you're doing to show up for the Jewish community is so special. Can you explain the White Roses?
Yeah, absolutely. So we are right now to date, we have showed up 188 times around the US and a couple times internationally. So I'm really proud of our network. And the Philos Action League isn't just young professionals. Anyone who loves Israel can join. All the other programs at Philos we do have a specific age group, but anyone who loves Israel who wants to help us, please. And yes, so the White Roses, kind of our little calling card, as you will. What we decided to do was to replace something that's horrific and ugly, such as hate, with something beautiful, which are roses. And we decided to use the white rose to pay homage to people that came before us. So there was an organization in 1930s Germany called the White Rose Resistance Movement. It was started by university students at the University of Munich, specifically a brother and sister, Sophie and Hans Scholl. They were Christians. It was actually a very ecumenical organization. There were different denominations that were represented in that group, which is also Philos. We represent organizations across the board. And what they did is they resisted and educated those around them on what was happening in Germany, specifically in reference to Nazism and what they were doing that was anti-Semitic towards their neighbors. They created documents and just tried to educate people and distribute that message across Germany. They were arrested and persecuted and then killed for what they did. So we use the White Rose to represent all the Christians in time and history that have come before us, who have supported and stood with the Jewish community in times of hardship. It's their legacy that we want to embody and carry on and make sure that we continue to do those things and to stand up and show up, even in moments that it's hard.
Thank you. That's so beautiful. And I love that. I love to think of this as being a legacy of Christian support for Israel and being a friend to the Jewish community, being a legacy that the Philos Action League is continuing. Can you share, has there been a particular moment or a particular reaction to your work that you were particularly proud of?
So when it comes to the reactions, sometimes we don't get a response, and that's okay. In the instances where we do, it's always overwhelming gratitude. The Jewish community has fought so long and continues to fight against this insane hatred that just comes at them from a lot of angles, that when there's a friend who is willing to use their voice, use their platform, use their influence to show others that they're like, we're here, you're not alone. I think they're taken aback. And so whenever I have those conversations, it's gratitude, it just overflowing. And we don't do it for, the applause or any of the response from the community. I just want them to know that they have those friends. So every time someone does thank us or we have a conversation, how we can grow and strengthen this relationship, that impacts me so much, because it's the small little ripple effects that really change, the whole fabric of communities and society. So for me, it's just an honor to do what we do.
Yeah. I know Philos offers different resources for Christians to really educate themselves on a number of topics, but including Israel, the Middle East, different communities in the Middle East. Can you tell us about what those resources are? Like, I know Pathfinder and there's some other things.
Yeah, absolutely. So Philos, we have a great offering of resources, like you had mentioned, Destiny. Pathfinder is our free online courses. I don't know the number we're at now, but I think we're at 10 courses. It's open to anyone, all ages. Again, if you're just older and you want to learn a little more, it's free. So you can go online to our website, philos.org, philosproject.org, I'm sorry. And you just click the Pathfinder link, you create an account, and then you can watch some courses on people who are very knowledgeable. So it's on the current situation going on in Israel with the Palestinians. We have a topic on Syria, what has happened in that community, and other things that are really relevant to the geopolitical situation. And then also, again, those indigenous Christian communities who are living out what's going on right now. So those are some things. We also have the Charles Malik Institute, which is specifically the writings of Charles Malik, who is a Lebanese diplomat who helped draft the Declaration of Human Rights at the UN, and his thought process and how it's important to live in community with people who you don't agree with. So we have those opportunities as well. And then we have specific groups for different communities. We have Philos Latino, we have Philos Black, and Philos Catholic. So community groups that can talk about discussions that affect their community and how their community can better support Israel and the Jewish people are all things that we have at the Philos Project.
Wow, so exciting. And I would encourage anyone who wants to learn more about Israel, the Middle East, etc., please go to the Philos Project website, because all of those resources sound so helpful and so important to educating people. And you have to be educated in order to put your knowledge to action, right?
Absolutely.
There's a scripture that says, like, zeal without knowledge is harmful, and I would really encourage anyone to get some knowledge. Go to the Philos Project website and get some knowledge if you're uncertain about any of these things Hannah and I are discussing. Hannah, I'd love to know a bit about what gives you hope in your work.
Yeah. So as you know, the work that we do is hard. On most days, it can seem so overwhelming that the negative outweighs the positive. For me, it's kind of, to repeat again, those small moments of interaction I have with my friends in the Jewish community or people in the Jewish community that in just passing at events when I tell them what we're doing, just the look on their face to know that they're, again, not alone, that they have friends who will join them in this. And again, my faith, without my faith, I wouldn't find hope in all of the craziness that surrounds us. So being grounded in that and the scriptures is so important. And again, we have to thank the Jewish people because the roots of our faith come from them. And so just that faith and those moments when you're connecting with someone and they just feel so, you can see it in their eyes to know that they're not alone, and it gives them hope. That gives me hope that the little things that we do really make a difference to others.
Thank you. Wow, there's just so much that you've shared today that really stands out to me and just resonates so strongly with me. How, Hannah, you've kind of touched on this, but I would love if you could expand on how your faith connects to Israel and the Jewish people. You mentioned earlier that the Philos Project understands that Christianity has Hebrew roots and roots in the Middle East. Could you expand on that?
Yeah. So kind of, again, to reiterate, the Hebraic tradition that we talk about at the Philos Project, but also for me personally, is so important. It's so important to understand the Bible in the original language it's written. It was written in Aramaic, which was derived from Hebrew. Our whole faith starts there. The Old Testament is so rich with knowledge. And as a Christian, you can't just look at the New Testament. You have to look at the entire Bible. So for me, the whole Old Testament, the Old Testament, it takes place and talks about this land of Israel so many times that even maybe without me having these experiences when I was younger, it was kind of planting those seeds back then in hearing Israel and Jerusalem and this place and just all of the heroes of the faith talking about, this covenant, this promise. It's so important that we know all of that. And for me personally, the scripture about being like the root does not, I'm gonna butcher it, but the root is so important to us being grafted in, right? The roots of our faith are crucial to who we are. And without that, it would be great, but it wouldn't be complete. So Israel is, and all of the Hebrew roots are at the center of that. And so for me, my faith journey, that was there. And again, when I went to Israel that first time, there was a moment we were in the Negev desert and I was just praying and I looked up at the stars because it's so dark there. You can see the most stars I've ever seen in my entire life. It was beautiful. And I looked up and I'm like, these are the stars that like the Lord told Abraham about, that God told him about. His descendants would be like this. And I just started weeping. And so it just connected the books, like the scripture that I've been reading for my entire life when I was like physically in that place. So again,
Yeah.
kind of one of those divine moments that are hard sometimes to put into words.
Yeah. I feel I connect with the land of Israel when I go there. I was explaining, so I staffed an Israel trip this last winter that was 75% Jewish students, 25% not Jewish students from just all different religious backgrounds. And I was explaining to the Jewish students on the trip, because we went to the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, and they were asking me, like, they were like, do you just love this? Do you feel so connected to your faith at the Church of the Holy Sepulchre? And I really appreciate the artwork there. And I really appreciate going there, and I appreciate what it stands for. But it comes from like a more Orthodox Christian tradition, right. And that is the tradition that I come from. Same. And so I was explaining to them, I connect more to the land of Israel when I go there because of the pictures that you've just painted of, Abraham looking up at the stars and realizing, having that visual of God's promise to him. When I'm in the land of Israel and I look up at the stars, or when I am in the desert, I look up at the stars and I can imagine Abraham, having that revelation, and I imagine him in the desert. I don't know if it actually says in the Bible that he was.
I know, same.
I assume he was, right? I just picture them all in the desert. Israel's a desert. The Middle East, there's lots of deserts. It's just what I picture.
True. That's true.
What I picture. But you get that visual when you're in the land of Israel. And when I am in Bethlehem, I look out and I see, I just imagine like King David, in Bethlehem. And I imagine, you know what I mean? Like,
yep.
You just get such a picture of the heroes of your faith, and a picture of these stories that happened in the Bible when you're in the land of Israel, and it's like, oh, here I am among the Jewish people in the land of Israel, and everything just comes to life in a new way.
Absolutely. I feel the same way. There's this one hillside that we went to, overlooking Bethlehem, and they call it's Shepherd's Field. And so they're talking about, they're like, these are the hills the shepherds were in, and the angels were in the sky, and they were telling them that Jesus was born. And it's more than a book. And it just proves that that book is real, because there's a real place grounded in it. There's something about land, and land matters. And that's why the land of Israel is so crucial, and why I think it is at the, crossroads of sometimes tension, because it's such a precious piece of physical property, because it holds so much more than even just the geographic elements. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, let's go to Israel, Hannah.
I mean, I would love to go with you. Let's go, so then we can experience it together. When I was in Jerusalem too, Jerusalem holds such a special place in my heart, because I lived there for a year. And also just Jerusalem, especially by the old city, there's just, I don't know, I just walk in and just all automatically I feel something. And I'm just like, wow, like I'm kind of home. Like it's like a piece of me is here. And I think that's such a unique ability, like a city to feel that way for people. I can't even imagine being part of the Jewish community, because it 100-fold of what I get to feel, just a tiny portion. And I'm grateful to experience that. So let's go. I can pack my suitcase right now.
Yeah, I feel the same way, but about Tel Aviv.
I know, because you live there.
I love Tel Aviv. But I do feel, even when I lived there, some days I would just go to the Western Wall. There's like a bus that you can take from, I think there's a train now, but at the time there was a bus you could take from central Tel Aviv to central Jerusalem. And I just go to the Western Wall and just read my Bible for hours, and just pray Psalms for hours, and watch everybody, pray their Psalms for hours. And it's just special. And I'll never forget the first time I went to Israel and saw Shabbat at the Western Wall on a beautiful summer night. It just was it was magical. I don't know how else to say it. I don't know if it's Christian to describe it that way or biblical to describe it that way, but it just felt, so magical. And really, it's a really beautiful place. And yeah, we should let's all go.
Let's go.
Listening, let's all go.
Let's go. I'll book the tickets.
Oh man. Well, Hannah, it has been such a pleasure having you on the podcast today. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Destiny. Thank you for all the work that you do, and everyone at ICC. I really appreciate that opportunity to be on here, and we love partnering with y'all.
We love partnering with you all as well.